The immigrant cleaner returned a dropped wallet, not knowing its owner would help her achieve her dream. Eliana Reyes's trembling fingers closed around the sleek leather billfold as the evening subway crowd rushed past her in a blur of wool coats and impatient footsteps. Her heart hammered against her ribs. The wallet was heavy with cash, credit cards, and a life that wasn't hers. 3 stops after she'd found it, Eliana was still clutching the wallet against her threadbare coat as though it might dissolve into the winter air. The fluorescent lights of the subway car cast harsh shadows across her face, accentuating the exhaustion etched into the corners of her eyes. 28 years old, and she felt ancient, worn down by years of scrubbing other people's floors, dusting their treasures, and disappearing before they returned home. Eliana allowed herself, just for a moment, to imagine what she could do with the money inside. The rent she struggled to pay each month for the tiny apartment she shared with her cousin. The evening classes she dreamed of taking. The possibility of bringing her mother from Ecuador. The weight of these dreams pressed against her chest until she could hardly breathe. But her mama hadn't raised a thief. When she finally exited at her stop in Queens, the night had fully settled, bringing with it a biting cold that seeped through her thin gloves. Her fingers felt numb as she opened the wallet, looking for some form of identification. A driver's license stared back at her. Catherine Bennett, 35, Manhattan address, alongside a business card for the Bennett Gallery in Chelsea. Probably rich, Eliana muttered, her breath forming small clouds in the cold air. Probably won't even notice it's gone. But she knew that wasn't true. Everyone noticed when something important disappeared. Eliana had been noticing disappearances all her life. Her father when she was 7, her home country at 19, and slowly, her hope as each year in America passed without the future she had imagined. Her small apartment was dark when she arrived, her cousin working a night shift at the hospital cafeteria. Eliana made herself a cup of tea, its warmth between her palms a small comfort as she stared at the wallet on her kitchen table. Tomorrow was Wednesday, her half-day at the Peterson apartment on the Upper East Side. She would have time to take the wallet to the gallery address afterward. Sleep came fitfully that night, dreams of falling and reaching for something just beyond her grasp. Morning arrived with pale sunlight filtering through thin curtains. Eliana dressed in her cleaning uniform, dark pants and a navy polo shirt that had faded over countless washes. She tucked the wallet into her inner coat pocket, its presence like a stone against her chest. Mrs. Peterson barely acknowledged her arrival, merely waving toward the guest bathroom where someone had apparently been sick during a dinner party the night before. Eliana worked methodically, scrubbing away strangers' messes as she had done thousands of times before, her mind drifting to the wallet and its owner. By 2 o'clock, Eliana had finished her work and was standing outside the Bennett Gallery in Chelsea, her reflection distorted in the sleek glass facade. Inside, she could see minimalist white walls, carefully arranged lighting, and artwork that probably cost more than she earned in a year. Her courage nearly failed her then, but the weight of the wallet anchored her to her purpose. The gallery was quiet, just 2 well-dressed patrons murmuring in a corner. Behind a glass desk sat a young man with fashionable glasses who looked up with a practiced smile that faltered slightly when he took in Eliana's appearance. "Can I help you?" His tone suggested he doubted he could. "I need to see Catherine Bennett," Eliana said, her accent thickening with nervousness. "I found something of hers. Ms. Bennett is in a meeting. Perhaps I could—" "It's her wallet," Eliana interrupted, unusual boldness surging through her. "I think she would want it back right away." The receptionist's eyebrows rose and he reached for the phone. After a brief conversation, he gestured toward a sleek chair. "She'll be with you shortly." Eliana perched on the edge of the chair, feeling out of place among the pristine surroundings. Her work clothes seemed to absorb the gallery's light, making her feel like a shadow that had accidentally wandered inside. 10 minutes later, a door opened and a woman emerged. Catherine Bennett matched her driver's license photo, but seemed more vibrant in person. Tall and elegant in a charcoal suit, with short, silver-streaked dark hair and intelligent eyes that immediately found Eliana. "You found my wallet?" Her voice was warm, with none of the condescension Eliana had expected. Eliana stood, reaching into her coat to retrieve the wallet. On the subway, last night, Catherine's face transformed with relief as she took the wallet and quickly checked its contents. "Everything's here. Everything." She looked up at Eliana with genuine gratitude. "Do you know how rare that is?" "You're extraordinary." The simple praise made Eliana's cheeks warm. "It wasn't mine to keep. Most people would disagree with that philosophy. Catherine studied her more closely. I'd like to reward you. No, please, Eliana interjected, embarrassment flooding through her. I don't want payment for doing what's right. Catherine tilted her head, considering Eliana with new interest. Then at least tell me your name. Eliana Reyes. Well, Eliana Reyes, would you let me buy you a coffee? I was about to take a break anyway, and I'd like to thank you properly. The invitation was so unexpected that Eliana found herself agreeing before she could think of a reason to decline. 10 minutes later, they were seated in a small cafe next door, steam rising from ceramic mugs between them. Catherine had ordered for both of them, a latte for herself and hot chocolate for Eliana, somehow intuiting her preference for sweetness. You saved me hours of bureaucratic nightmare, Catherine said, wrapping long fingers around her mug. Canceling credit cards, replacing my driver's license, not to mention, she hesitated. There was something irreplaceable in there. Eliana remembered seeing a worn photograph tucked into one of the wallet's compartments, but had been careful not to examine it closely. I'm glad I found it then. Where are you from originally, Eliana? Catherine asked, the question gentle rather than presumptuous. Ecuador. I came 9 years ago. Eliana sipped her hot chocolate, the rich sweetness momentarily distracting her from the conversation's sudden personal turn. And what do you do here in New York? I clean. Eliana's chin lifted slightly, a reflexive defense against potential judgment. Houses, apartments, sometimes offices. Catherine nodded without a hint of condescension. Hard work. I did housekeeping in college to pay tuition, though I'm sure my experience barely scratches the surface of yours. The acknowledgement, so simple yet so rare, caught Eliana off guard. She found herself sharing more than she'd intended, about her cousin, her small apartment, the home she'd left behind. But she carefully omitted her dreams. The night classes in design she couldn't afford, the sketchbook filled with clothing patterns hidden beneath her bed. Those felt too fragile to expose. As they finished their drinks, Catherine handed Eliana her business card. If you ever need anything, a reference, another client, anything, please call me. I mean it. Eliana tucked the card away, certain she would never use it, but touched by the gesture nonetheless. They parted ways outside the cafe, Catherine heading back to her gallery and Eliana to the subway, the encounter already feeling dreamlike in its improbability. That night, Eliana found herself taking out her sketchbook for the first time in months. Her pencil moved across the paper, creating flowing lines that became a dress inspired by Ecuadorian textiles, but with a contemporary silhouette. She worked until her eyes burned with fatigue, the creative spark that had been nearly extinguished now flickering tentatively back to life. 3 weeks passed, filled with the familiar rhythm of work. Mrs. Peterson's spotless apartment on Wednesdays, the Goldstein family's chaotic brownstone on Thursdays, the rotation of weekend clients whose names sometimes escaped her. Catherine Bennett and her gallery became a pleasant but distant memory, a brief intersection with a world not meant for Eliana. Until the third Wednesday in February, when Eliana arrived at the Peterson apartment to find her employer waiting with a strange expression. There's been a call about you, Mrs. Peterson said, her thin lips pursed with curiosity. From someone named Catherine Bennett. She said she's been trying to reach you. Eliana's stomach tightened. Did something happen with the wallet? She didn't say, just left her number and asked that you call her back, Mrs. Peterson handed over a slip of paper, watching Eliana with newfound interest. Is she one of your clients? No, Eliana said, pocketing the paper. Just someone I helped once, Mrs. Peterson seemed disappointed by the mundane explanation, but soon left Eliana to her work. As she cleaned, Eliana's mind raced with possibilities. Had something been missing from the wallet after all? Was Catherine going to accuse her of theft? She waited until her lunch break to make the call, fingers trembling slightly as she dialed from her prepaid phone. Catherine answered on the second ring. This is Catherine Bennett. Ms. Bennett, it's Eliana Reyes. You called about me? Eliana. Yes, thank you for calling back. Catherine's voice warmed with recognition. I have a situation I thought you might be able to help with. The cleaning service we use for the gallery has been unreliable lately, and I remembered you mentioning that you clean professionally. Would you be interested in adding us to your client list? The pay would be better than residential rates, I can promise you that. The offer was so unexpected that Eliana found herself speechless for a moment. Your gallery? You want me to clean your gallery? If you're interested, it would be twice a week, mornings before we open. You'd have keys, of course, and full access. We're not a large space, but we need someone meticulous and trustworthy. You've proven yourself to be both." The opportunity seemed to hover in the air between them, not just additional income, but a chance to be surrounded by art, by beauty, by the creative world Eliana had always admired from a distance. "Yes," she said finally, her voice stronger than she expected. "I would like that very much." 2 days later, Eliana stood inside the Bennett Gallery before opening hours, keys in hand, listening as Catherine explained the specific needs of the space. The morning light streamed through the tall windows, illuminating the white walls and polished concrete floors. "The artwork needs special attention," Catherine explained, showing Eliana the non-abrasive cloths and solutions to use. "But I trust your careful hands." As the weeks passed, the gallery became Eliana's favorite workplace. She arrived early, savoring the quiet moments alone with the art, learning the names of artists, studying techniques and styles. Sometimes she would find Catherine already there, preparing for a meeting or arranging a new exhibition, and they would share coffee and conversation before the day properly began. Catherine never treated her as just the cleaner. She asked Eliana's opinion on the lighting for new installations, shared stories about artists, and sometimes just sat in companionable silence as Eliana worked and she reviewed paperwork. It was during one such morning in late April, nearly 3 months after Eliana had found the wallet, that everything changed. She had finished cleaning earlier than usual and was standing before a new textile installation, lost in the intricate patterns that reminded her of her grandmother's weaving. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Catherine's voice came from behind her. Eliana nodded, not embarrassed to be caught admiring the art. Catherine had encouraged such moments. "It reminds me of home. The artist is Colombian. She incorporates traditional techniques with contemporary designs." Catherine moved to stand beside her. "You have a good eye for textiles." "I've noticed it before." Eliana felt her cheeks warm at the compliment. "My grandmother was a weaver, and my mother sewed clothing for people in our village." Catherine turned to her with interest. "Did you learn from them?" The question opened something in Eliana, a door she usually kept firmly closed. "Yes. I used to design clothes. Nothing fancy, just ideas." She hesitated, then added quietly, "I still sketch sometimes." "May I see?" Catherine asked, the question simple but profound in its implications. Eliana's heart raced. "They're not good enough. I'd still like to see them." "If you're willing." The next morning, Eliana brought her sketchbook, worn at the edges from years of use. Her hands trembled slightly as she handed it to Catherine in the quiet gallery. As Catherine turned the pages, her expression shifted from polite interest to genuine engagement. "These are remarkable, Eliana. The way you blend traditional elements with modern silhouettes." She looked up, eyes bright with excitement. "Have you ever made any of these?" "Some back home and a few here for my cousin. But the materials are expensive, and I don't have a proper machine anymore." Catherine closed the sketchbook with decisive movement. "I have a friend, Marcos Vega. He teaches at Parsons School of Design and runs a mentorship program for emerging designers from underrepresented backgrounds. I think he would be very interested in your work." Eliana's breath caught. "I'm just a cleaner, Miss Bennett." "Catherine," she corrected gently, "and you're not just anything. You're a talented designer who cleans to pay her bills. There's a difference." The following week, Eliana found herself sitting across from Marcos Vega in his cluttered office at Parsons, her sketchbook open between them. He was a compact man with quick movements and faster speech, his enthusiasm for design immediately apparent. "Catherine has good instincts," he said after examining her work. "You have a unique perspective and technical understanding. Raw but promising." He looked up at her. "Our program provides materials, workspace, mentorship, and a small stipend for 6 months. It's competitive. We only take 4 designers each cycle." Hope and fear warred within Eliana. "When are applications due?" "For the fall cohort?" 2 weeks ago." He smiled at her crestfallen expression. "But we had a last-minute withdrawal. I have 1 spot to fill, and Catherine Bennett called in a favor." Eliana's hands clutched the edge of her chair. "You mean—" "I mean the spot is yours if you want it. It's not charity," he added quickly, seeing her expression. "It's investment in talent. The program requires 20 hours a week minimum. Can you manage that with your cleaning schedule?" 20 hours. She would have to drop at least 2 clients. The math raced through her head. Rent, food, the money she sent home each month. It would be tight, desperately tight. "Yes," she said, the word a leap of faith. "I can manage." Summer passed in a blur of work and creation. Eliana kept the gallery cleaning job and her Wednesday position with Mrs. Peterson, but reluctantly gave up her other clients. Her days began before dawn and often ended well past midnight, her hands alternately raw from cleaning solutions and pricked by needles as she learned to use the industrial sewing machines at Parsons. The program challenged her in ways she hadn't anticipated. The other designers, from Korea, Senegal, and the Bronx, had formal training she lacked. Technical terms she'd never heard flew around the workspace, and the first time a fellow student asked about her design philosophy, Eliana had stared blankly, mortified by her ignorance. But what she lacked in vocabulary, she made up for in determination and innate talent. Her first project, a jacket that incorporated traditional Ecuadorian embroidery techniques with a structured modern cut, earned praise from Marcos and jealous glances from her peers. "You have something they can't teach," Catherine told her over coffee one morning at the gallery. They had fallen into the habit of these pre-opening conversations, moments of calm before their respective days accelerated. An authentic voice. Eliana smiled tiredly, dark circles under her eyes testifying to her exhaustion. "What I need is more hours in the day." Catherine studied her with concern. "You're pushing yourself too hard." "I have no choice. This opportunity? I can't waste it." September became October, and as the weather cooled, Eliana's confidence slowly warmed. Her designs improved, her technical skills sharpened, and she began to contribute to workshop discussions, her initial shyness giving way to passionate opinions about sustainability and fashion, and the cultural appropriation of indigenous designs. But the punishing schedule took its toll. One morning in early November, Catherine arrived at the gallery to find Eliana asleep on the small office sofa, cleaning supplies still arranged nearby, her body finally surrendering to exhaustion mid-task. "Eliana," Catherine said gently, touching her shoulder. Eliana startled awake, disoriented and immediately mortified. "I'm so sorry, I just sat down for a moment." "Stop." Catherine's voice was firm but kind. "This isn't sustainable. You're going to make yourself ill." Tears of fatigue and frustration welled in Eliana's eyes. "I don't have a choice. The program ends in January, and then what? Back to cleaning full-time? I have to make the most of every minute." Catherine sat beside her on the sofa. "What if there was another way? The gallery has been doing well this quarter. I've been thinking of hiring an assistant, someone to help with installations, client relations, general management. Part-time initially, with flexibility for your program hours." Eliana stared at her, uncomprehending. "You're offering me a job? At the gallery?" "I'm offering you a fair wage for work you're qualified to do, in an environment where you can continue learning about the art world." "It's not charity, Eliana. It's a business decision." "But why me?" "I don't have experience. You have exactness, observation skills, cultural sensitivity, and you understand beauty." Catherine smiled. "Besides, you already have the keys." The gallery assistant position changed everything. The work was challenging in new ways, learning cataloging systems, handling client inquiries, assisting with installation logistics, but the regular hours and improved pay allowed Eliana to focus more fully on her design program. She gave up her remaining cleaning jobs, including Mrs. Peterson's, who accepted her resignation with surprising warmth and a request for Eliana's future business card when you're famous. As December arrived, bringing holiday exhibitions to the gallery and final projects at Parsons, Eliana found herself in Catherine's office late one evening, helping organize the upcoming winter showcase. "I've been meaning to ask," Eliana said, arranging portfolio files. "What was it in your wallet? The irreplaceable thing you mentioned that first day." Catherine looked up, surprised by the question. "You saw it but didn't look closely, did you?" "I tried not to pry." Catherine opened her desk drawer and withdrew her wallet, now slightly more worn than when Eliana had returned it. From an inner pocket, she carefully removed a folded photograph and handed it to Eliana. The photo showed a younger Catherine with her arm around a smiling older woman with the same dark eyes, both standing before what appeared to be the gallery building, a grand opening, banner visible in the background. "My mother," Catherine explained quietly. "She helped me start the gallery. She believed in my vision when no one else did. She remortgaged her house to provide the initial funding." Her voice softened. "She died 3 years ago. Cancer. This is the only photo I have of us on opening day. I've been meaning to make copies but somehow never get around to it." Eliana carefully returned the photograph, understanding now why Catherine had been so grateful for the wallet's return. "She would be proud of what you've built. I like to think so. Catherine's gaze was contemplative. You know, I've been thinking about the final showcase for your program. Marcos mentioned you're all preparing collections for the January presentation. Eliana nodded, a flutter of nervousness in her stomach. The showcase would be attended by industry professionals, potential employers, and press. Her collection, 5 pieces inspired by the immigrant experience, blending elements of Ecuadorian craft with New York urban aesthetics, represented everything she had learned and hoped for. The gallery has a small adjoining space we sometimes use for experimental exhibitions, Catherine continued. I'd like to offer it for an after-party following your showcase. Somewhere for potential contacts to mingle, see the work up close, have conversations that aren't possible in the formal setting. Eliana's eyes widened. For all 4 of us in the program? If you think your colleagues would be interested, consider it the gallery's contribution to emerging artists. The offer was generous beyond anything Eliana had expected, a chance to extend the showcase's impact, to create connections that might otherwise never form. Catherine, I don't know how to thank you. You already did, Catherine said simply. You returned something precious to me when you could have easily kept it. I'm just continuing the circle. January arrived with biting cold and nervous anticipation. The night of the showcase, Eliana stood backstage at the Parsons presentation space, watching as models were fitted with her designs. 9 months of learning, creating, and exhaustion had culminated in this moment. You ready? Marcos appeared beside her, clipboard in hand, his usual energy somewhat contained by the formality of the event. Eliana nodded, hands clasped tightly together to hide their trembling. As I'll ever be. Your section is 3rd. The Bennett Gallery crowd arrived early. They're taking up the entire left front section. He grinned at her surprise. Catherine seems to have invited everyone she knows. Indeed, when Eliana peeked through the curtains, she saw Catherine in the front row, surrounded by gallery clients and artists Eliana had come to know over the past months. The unexpected support brought a lump to her throat. The showcase unfolded like a dream. Lights, music, the parade of models wearing creations from 4 distinct designers. When Eliana's collection appeared, the response was immediate. Murmurs of appreciation, phones raised to capture images, nodding heads among the industry professionals. Her final piece, a flowing evening dress with hand-embroidered panels depicting a stylized journey from Ecuadorian mountains to New York skyline, received spontaneous applause. As Eliana took her brief bow alongside the model, she caught Catherine's eye in the audience. The gallery owner was smiling broadly, her expression a mirror of the pride Eliana had seen in the photograph of Catherine's mother. The after-party at the gallery space transformed the showcase's formal appreciation into genuine connection. Industry professionals who might have remained distant figures now approached Eliana directly, business cards extended, questions about her techniques and inspiration flowing freely. Eliana! A woman with steel-gray hair and fashionable oversized glasses approached, hand extended. Judith Winters from Atelier Resource. Your work is remarkable, particularly your integration of traditional techniques. We're always looking for fresh perspectives for our collective. Atelier Resource, one of New York's most respected incubators for emerging designers. Eliana had read about them during her program research, never imagining they might show interest in her work. Thank you, she managed, accepting the business card with slightly trembling fingers. I'm honored you came tonight. Catherine insisted I would be a fool to miss it. Judith smiled. And she's rarely wrong about talent. We should talk soon about our upcoming residency program. The evening continued in a blur of introductions, conversations, and possibilities. By midnight, as the last guests departed, Eliana found herself alone with Catherine in the gallery space, surrounded by the remnants of celebration. I think, Catherine said, handing Eliana a glass of champagne from the last open bottle, this qualifies as achieving your dream. Or at least the beginning of it? Eliana accepted the glass, emotion tightening her throat. I never imagined any of this was possible. Not really? No. Catherine raised an eyebrow. Then why did you keep designing all those years? Why fill sketchbooks if you truly believed it was impossible? The question struck at something essential. Eliana considered it as she looked around the space, at the displayed samples of her work, at the scattered business cards she had collected throughout the evening. Because I couldn't stop, she said finally. Even when it seemed pointless, I couldn't stop creating. Catherine nodded, satisfied. That's how you know it's real. When you persist, despite every reason to give up. She raised her glass. To persistence. And to returning lost things. Eliana smiled, understanding the deeper meaning. To returning lost things, she echoed, their glasses meeting with a gentle chime that seemed to resonate with possibility. 3 days later, Eliana received an email from Atelier Resource offering her a 1-year paid residency with studio space, materials budget, and mentorship from established designers. The same afternoon, Marcos called to tell her that a small boutique in Soho wanted to commission pieces based on her showcase collection. That evening, she sat in her apartment, no longer shared as her cousin had recently moved in with her boyfriend, and called her mother in Ecuador. As they spoke, Eliana's gaze fell on the small table where, nearly a year earlier, she had placed a stranger's wallet and made the decision that would alter her life's trajectory. "I think," she told her mother, "I might be able to bring you for a visit soon. To see New York. To see what I'm building here." Spring arrived with gentle persistence, melting the last of winter's stubbornness. On a bright April morning, almost exactly 1 year after Eliana had first shown Catherine her sketchbook, they stood together in JFK's International Arrivals area, watching passengers emerge from customs. "Nervous?" Catherine asked, noting Eliana's restless movements. "It's been 4 years since I've seen her," Eliana replied, scanning the crowd. "What if she doesn't recognize me?" "Mothers always recognize their children," Catherine said softly, "no matter how much they've grown." When Maria Reyes finally appeared through the doors, pulling a small suitcase and looking overwhelmed by the airport's vastness, Eliana felt her heart expand almost painfully in her chest. Her mother had aged, silver now prominent in her dark hair, new lines around her eyes, but her smile, when she spotted Eliana, was unchanged, a burst of pure joy that transcended time and distance. They collided in an embrace that contained 4 years of absence, of phone calls that couldn't convey touch, of achievements described but not shared. Eliana breathed in the familiar scent of her mother's hair, feeling simultaneously like a child coming home and an adult welcoming a visitor to the life she had built. "Mama?" she said when they finally separated, wiping tears from her cheeks. "This is Catherine Bennett. My friend? The one I told you about." Maria Reyes took Catherine's hands in hers, her eyes full of a mother's gratitude. "You helped my daughter achieve her dream." Catherine shook her head gently. "Your daughter achieved her own dream. I just returned something she dropped along the way." As they left the airport together, stepping into the spring sunshine, Eliana felt the full circle of her journey, from the frightened immigrant cleaner who had once found a wallet to the emerging designer, walking confidently between the two women who represented her past and the future that had once seemed impossible. Some lost things, once returned, create paths that lead exactly where they're meant to go.